And now let's welcome in the Malzberg panel. Brad Hirschfield, author of You Don't Have to Be Wrong for Me to Be Right, and president of CLAL. And Brigitte Gabriel is with us, president of Act for America and author of They Must Be Stopped. I welcome both of you. Brigitte, good to see you. It's been a long time. Not that it's not great to see you, Brad, as well. All right, Brigitte, your take on what happened yesterday, but more importantly, what we know so far.
Well, what happened yesterday was expected. What is scary, though, is that even though the Belgian government knew that this was coming, they were on the lookout, they were on the highest terror alert, yet the terrorists were still able to pull such a terrorist attack, which goes to show you that we are fighting an enemy that is very tactful. It is very different than anything the world has experienced before, because right now we're basically fighting individuals who are planning and willing to kill themselves in order to kill others, walking into an airport at the check-in counter before they even get to security, which makes all of us here in the West be really concerned about what is next, where can they attack next, because you cannot protect against something like this, such a soft target.
Brad?
You can't protect, and yet there is a fundamental difference, and I don't think anyone here is going to disagree. We have for too long related to global terror as a law enforcement issue and not as a war. There is a fundamental difference.
For about 8 years.
Well, it goes even before that, but it is disconcerting. Yes, really, and it is terribly disconcerting because in a war, bad things happen, and you do things. I know this personally that you may live to regret. But you cannot fight terrorism simply as a law enforcement issue. We will have to decide that we really are engaged in a war and what it means to fight that war. One of the real challenges we face now is, too often in terms of the political leadership here in the United States, the people who most appreciate that we are in a war often forget what we're fighting for. And the ones who talk about high-minded ideas of what we're fighting for cannot embrace the fact that law enforcement alone will not stop global terror.
Brigitte, that goes hand in hand in my view. I agree with Brad. I do think it started under Obama, and I think it started under Obama first and foremost with getting rid of the enhanced interrogations, which, my God, if they didn't stick that scum's head underwater from the Paris attack and he didn't tell them about these attacks, then shame on them. They should have stuck his head underwater and done worse to him.
Listen, in war, you have to do things just like what Brad said. We have to protect ourselves, and if that means doing whatever torture we have to do to our enemy in order to save the lives of thousands of people in our cities, then that's exactly what we must do. Can you imagine if General Patton or any of our generals in previous wars, can you imagine if in World War II we did not want to drop any bomb in order for us not to kill civilians? The world will be a very different place right now.
In fact, Brigitte, and I do have to jump in, ethical combatants all over the world, in the United States during World War II, in the state of Israel today, in many, many countries, ethical combatants do recognize limitations and do not do anything we want to do.
You know what, Brad?
Steve, you're wrong. You're historically wrong. There are limitations, and that is the nature of fighting. Bombing, I support.
Brad, I'm going to talk here.
Go ahead.
We bombed cities in World War II. Brigitte is exactly right. You could say,
and I didn't question that, Steve.
I agree with you. And you know what?
No, there were limitations
and
then. And you talked about terror, not bombing. As a combatant, I can tell you, yes, if you get the facts right.
I got the facts right. We won World War II, and we're losing this because of people like you, Brad, and your mindset. It's dangerous, and it's got to be stopped. We're coming back.
Why is it that Muslims and other immigrants in Belgium have such a problem integrating with local society? Why is it that they do not feel like they are Belgian? Why is it that they are ghettoized into these communities? And that has a lot to do with what's going on here, because again, if you look at the numbers, a much higher percentage of Belgians have gone to go fight in Iraq and Syria than French nationals, and it's right next door. What is the reason for that discrepancy?
Yeah, we must find out why they're unhappy and why they're killing civilians in cold blood. This is the sick, twisted mindset. Welcome back to the Malzberg panel. Brad Hirschfield and Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte, that's Evan Coleman. He said this crap before on MSNBC. We always have to find out why they're unhappy with us, why they want to kill us. When in fact, we're hearing today that the reason they can't find the people they're looking for is because the Muslim community in Brussels in particular, in this case, hides them, keeps them, supports them.
Exactly. That's exactly what they do. I mean, this guy, this operative who was involved with the Paris attack, basically crossed the border, went back to his home where he was raised, and lived 3 houses down from his parents. That community was harboring him, protecting him. He didn't live in isolation. He went out, he hung out with his friends. They just protected him. They did not want to turn him in because they identify as Muslims first before they identify with any country that they live in. And, you know, when I hear people like this, Steve talk. Listen, there has been refugees to Europe from everywhere, including Lebanese Christians. How come the Jewish refugees assimilate? How come the Christian refugees assimilate? How come refugees from all over the world assimilate except for Muslim refugees? That is a problem that the world must address and discuss as to why specifically the Muslim community does not assimilate.
Well, Brad, Rich Nye, or whatever his name is, the science guy, I'll tell you it's because there's no water on their farms.
Well, I don't know about that, but I know that speaker made a fatal mistake. And I'm saying that as someone who thinks you do need to understand even people who are your enemy. And so it does pay to understand those social phenomena. But he made a claim that is factually an error and has everything to do with a real problem within that community. He talked about Muslims being ghettoized. A ghetto is a place where people are forced to live because of their race, their ethnicity, or their faith. There are no ghettos in Belgium. There are no ghettos in France. And there are certainly no ghettos here in the United States of America. I appreciate that people of specific races and ethnicities and religions may want to live together. That's true for me as a traditional Jew. But to even imagine that people are forced there and that being forced there legitimates sympathy, let alone acting as a terrorist, is completely insane. That said, we do have to understand social trends. There are differences in different communities. And Brigitte, there are real reasons why Europe was more open to even Jews who had murdered for thousands of years and Christians from foreign countries and hasn't been open to Islam. That said, it is not an excuse for terrorism in the name of Islam.
They accepted Muslims just like they accepted Jews and Christians. Listen, I come from Lebanon. A lot of Lebanese left Lebanon during the war and escaped. A lot of Muslims and Christians. When you look at the Muslims that immigrated to France or Belgium or Sweden or anywhere, and the Christians continue on with their life. They educate their children. They make a living. They blend into society. The Muslims end up congregating among themselves, not blending in, not assimilating. This has nothing to do with whether or not the Europeans looked at Muslims differently. The Muslims by themselves and their identity and culture are basically dividing themselves and aggregating among themselves and plotting terrorism.
Okay, look, I don't think you're completely wrong, but for you to be completely right, it would be the first time in all of human history recorded that a social phenomenon arose only on one side. It's just not the way it works. We don't disagree about the problems. They are theologically rooted in the community and in parts of the community. They are culturally rooted in other parts of the community. But to pretend that the response of Christian Europe to fleeing Christians has been the same as it was traditionally, either to fleeing Jews or more recently to fleeing Muslims, is simply to make up a story about Europe that isn't true.
Final word. Quick. All right. All right, guys, I appreciate it. Well, because I think the people who are fleeing are infested with terrorists who would kill the people they're going to live with, and that wasn't the case with Christians or Jews. Maybe that's a good reason. Brigitte and Brad, appreciate it. Up next, your phone calls. Don't go away.